Now, over the weekend, the European Union significantly ramped up its sanctions on Moscow. Russian banks were kicked out of the SWIFT banking system. On Sunday night, Europe's airspace was closed to Russian airlines, including the private jets of oligarchs. Russian state media, including Russia Today and Sputnik, have been banned from broadcasting on the bloc. The EU says it will also finance the purchase and delivery of weapons to Ukraine, the bloc aiming to spend 500 million euros in arms and aid in what has been described as a historic first. The EU's top diplomat said the move highlights another European Union taboo that has been dropped. For more on this story, we can bring in Sven Biscop, director of the Europe in the World program at the Egmont Institute. Thank you very much for joining us here on France 24. How far do you think the EU is willing to go to come to Ukraine's aid? Do you think a membership could be fast-tracked?
That seems unlikely, and one should not forget that actually the EU treaty also includes a collective defense guarantee, Article 42.7. So just like NATO, the other EU member states would then be forced to assist Ukraine with troops on the ground.
Okay, but so it can't be fast-tracked, but we have seen the European Union that has rushed to Ukraine's aid. Maybe not at the start; they were slow to to implement the sanctions, but over the weekend they really toughened up the response to Russia. What do you make of the European response so far?
Indeed, suddenly it has become very forceful, and I can imagine that this has surprised Russia. That in the end, all considerations about hurting our own economy too much have been set aside, and we've adopted a very tough sanctions package. The arms deliveries as well. I mean, this instrument existed. It was meant for stabilizing operations in Africa mostly, and now it's been used to intervene in a war in the heart of Europe. So it is a really important moment, I would say, for Europe's awareness as a strategic player.
You know, over the weekend, this term watershed moment, that's what the European leadership kept using. Do you think that this invasion of Ukraine, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, will fundamentally change relations between Brussels and Moscow forever?
Forever, not necessarily. Russia will not disappear, of course. Russia will remain a great power. So eventually, one would hope one can find a constructive neighborhood relationship with Russia in the long term, but it will all depend on the outcome of the conflict now, and whether in the end Moscow is willing to retreat. Obviously, nobody's going to recognize any new borders or anything that would be the result of this war of aggression. So I think it basically depends on Russia. Are they willing, maybe under some face-saving scheme, to retreat? Otherwise, we will see a freezing of relations for a long time to come.
How do you envision the EU's actions against Moscow? What result do you think we will get from that?
The sanctions are meant, of course, to increase the cost and also to isolate Russia, because the tougher the sanctions become, but also the more radical Vladimir Putin becomes, the more difficult it will be for Russia's partners to stay aloof, to stay on its side. Even for Beijing, it will be difficult to avoid making any choice whatsoever, because at some point their economy will also be impacted by these sanctions. And I cannot imagine that Beijing is happy to see Putin threatening with nuclear weapons, by the way.
You know, the sanctions are also going to have an impact on the European consumer. Do you think European leadership has informed the citizenry that there will be an impact in the short term, potentially?
I have the feeling that the images that we see now, the public demonstrations also we've had across Europe, that there is a sufficient base for this, and that people are willing to pay this price. But indeed, you will have to make it very clear why we are doing this. And of course, it's not just adopting the sanctions, it is finding alleviating measures for our own people, diversifying energy supply, and so on and so forth.
Sven Biscop, thank you very much for joining us on the program today.
Thank you.